that 6'2" beast of a team principal. He keeps on surprising us with his smooth business dealings. And no, I don't mean Mattia Binotto, the other 6'2" beast of a team principal. His decision making has been slightly less smooth, but we love him all the same. I'm talking about the Mercedes team principal, Toto Wolff. It's been announced that he's made a quite significant investment into Aston Martin worth a reported £37 million. Wait. DJ, pull the track. This is the same Toto that owns a significant stake in the Mercedes team. Would that be a huge conflict of interest? Him having investments in two teams that are in the same sport? Listen, I'm here and I can just about manage to function as a human, and Toto here like an absolute boss putting together big money moves. But you know what? How will this deal actually work, and what impact will it have on F1? Welcome to the F1 House. My name is Saki, and keep watching to find out my 4 predictions on what this will mean for the sport in the short and long term. Amongst all the uncertainty in the 2020 F1 season, it's been announced that Toto Wolff has purchased a stake in the iconic brand Aston Martin. He bought a 4.77% stake, which will then get diluted down to a 0.97% stake after rights issues by the manufacturer that will allow the company to raise more money. Now, this is a very important point, and I will get back to it later. Now, if you aren't aware already or new to my channel, I did a video about Aston Martin's recent investment from Racing Point owner Lawrence Stroll. So that should be popping up now so that you know what it looks like. Have a watch of it at the end of the video. It's got some really cool bits of information in it. I think the biggest thing that I learned whilst doing that video is that Lawrence Stroll is so well connected, and that him and Toto Wolff have a pretty strong bromance going. So this deal for me is not a huge surprise at all. It has even received approval from Mercedes and their parent owner, Daimler. Daimler, who in fact have some ownership in Aston Martin, they bought 5% of Aston Martin in exchange for supplying engines and electronic components back in 2013. A Mercedes spokesperson said that the move did not affect Wolff's role as an executive and shareholder at Mercedes F1. So all of this has led me to believe that a few things might be happening over the next few years. Obviously, some are more likely to happen than others. Number 1, more Toto Wolff investment. So this means that Wolff will probably be investing further in Aston Martin. At the point of me doing this video, we don't actually know what kind of shares he has bought or will be buying in future. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that he'd bought a 4.77% stake, which would get diluted down to 0.97% after rights issues. Now, rights issues, according to Investopedia, is this. I'm not going to bore you with the definition, but you can read it here. It basically means that shareholders of Aston Martin can buy new shares in Aston Martin at a discount of the market rate at a future date. So in theory, Toto could buy up more Aston Martin shares in future. This is so important because currently we don't know what kind of shares Toto has actually bought, or what shares in the future he has the option to buy. These could be non-voting shares or voting shares, which would give him a say of how things are run at Aston Martin. Either way, if Toto does take up the option to buy more shares, it may bring an increased conflict of interest, even if Mercedes and Daimler don't believe there to be a conflict at the moment. We saw in the past, when Toto had shares in Williams, whilst he was involved with Mercedes, there was an overlap where he had an interest in both teams. He then had to sell his stake in Williams once he had bought his 30% share of the Mercedes motorsport team. So only time will tell what will happen, but as I concluded in this video, I think that Lawrence Stroll means business, and I think he's going to be going out of his way to build a race-winning team. Now, I think Toto sees this ambition. Not surprisingly, he wants a piece of that billionaire's pie.
Tell him to bring me my money. Yeah!
Number 2, Toto Wolff to Aston Martin. After saying all that about him probably buying more shares in Aston Martin if things go well, I don't see him staying at Mercedes for the very long term, and these are the reasons why. Toto Wolff is a very, very smart businessman, and although he started off as a racer and has ended up team principal at the best team out there, ultimately he's a businessman first. He did this in his initial businesses, which were completely unrelated to F1, and was very successful. So he then took this money and invested elsewhere, namely the Williams F1 team. After this, he then invested in the Mercedes F1 team. It's extremely impressive. I just wonder with him, would he honestly want to settle for being 30% owner of something that is great, but which will probably have run its course in the next few seasons? Mercedes have been great, but that kind of success does not last forever. Toto will know this. What goes up must come down. No matter how much they'll be trying to stay on top, the odds say that another team will come along and knock them off the top spot, especially with the upcoming rule change, which is likely in 2022. I genuinely think that Toto will want to keep increasing his stake in F1 teams until he has his own F1 team, or at least has a controlling stake in one team. The natural progression for him, in my opinion, would be to go to Aston Martin.
I ain't never gonna stop. We taking over.
Toto knows exactly what needs to be put in place to create a winning team and environment. He has the finances. Lawrence Stroll also has the finances and the connections as well to make the most out of the 2022 rule change. So I can imagine Toto Wolff coming in at Aston Martin at a higher percentage eventually than he is at Mercedes, which is 30%. Obviously, these are just my thoughts and opinions. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. I really want to know what you guys think about this topic. And now it's that moment that a lot of people have been waiting for. Time to announce the winner of the competition that we ran the other month on Instagram. So to win, you need to follow the instructions on the competition post. They were pretty straightforward. The winner's been picked at random. Can I have a drum roll, please? And the winner is Gavin G. Scott. We'll be in touch with you to let you know how you can claim your prize. Next up, we have number 3, Mercedes B Team. If you were living under a rock and didn't see the 2020 car launches, then you will have missed the fact that the 2020 Racing Point car looks a lot like the 2019 F1 Mercedes car. You'll have also missed a lot of people complaining about it, including some teams. Now, just to make my views clearer on this, I don't see any problem with this as long as they actually have done what they say they have done and not just copied. Racing Point are taking advantage of all options available to them and are doing exactly what other teams have done in the past. The main team that springs to mind is Haas and Ferrari. Let's look at this deal and talk honestly. It's clearly going to create strong ties between Mercedes and Racing Point. Racing Point already use the Mercedes engine, gearbox, wind tunnel and other parts, but it could effectively see Racing Point Aston Martin become a certified Mercedes B team, with the Racing Point team used to test new developments and upgrades. And I don't care what anybody says.
And I tweeted him for that the other day. Don't care.
If the part owner of one F1 team becomes part owner of another F1 team, then there are going to be examples where the decision making will be split at some point between both teams, and there will be a slight conflict of interest. I do trust in the Mercedes setup and their ethos of doing things the right way that this won't be allowed to happen. Next up, number 4, Lewis Hamilton to Aston Martin.
Look at this.
Now here is a transfer rumour that will have you chucking your rotten fruit and veg at me and the screen. But bear with me, there is some logic, so let me explain. This is a pretty far-fetched and outlandish prediction, but this is more of a long-term one for me. I do believe Lewis will stay with Mercedes for the next 2 years after 2020, because why would you leave the most dominant team in the modern era? It's a no-brainer. But as I mentioned before, if Toto Wolff went over to Racing Point Aston Martin in a few years and pulled out on his Mercedes investment, I could see Lewis following suit. As I mentioned in my Lawrence Stroll video, Lawrence Stroll is a winner and he will want to win races and championships. This means getting the best in sport, which in turn means getting Toto Wolff, top drivers, a top design team and top engineers. This could mean getting Lewis Hamilton. Adrian Newey, and I know another far-fetched transfer rumour, but Adrian Newey has worked for Aston Martin before and quite substantially worked on the Aston Martin Valkyrie hypercar. And why do they call it a hypercar?
I don't even know, I can't even tell you that.
No, honestly, I don't have a clue. It would be a huge gamble for them all, but speaking about Lewis Hamilton especially, he has taken mad gambles before. Everyone thought he was a madman for moving to Mercedes from McLaren, but that has led to his current status as being the best driver of his era. Now, if the money and the right people are in place, I don't see why Racing Point won't become a very attractive option for people working in F1. So like I keep on saying, only time will tell how this will play out. I'm excited to see what movement we have in team personnel and teams really stepping up their game. And that just about finishes off the video, which I hope you've enjoyed. Until next time everyone, thanks for watching.